So, sitting down to write a fundraising letter or an appeal is a task that many of us take on each year. And in fact, maybe your organization sends multiple letters or appeals each year. So, this is something you're doing a couple of times every year. Well, in this video, I want to give you some easy to follow steps to help you write your best fundraising letter. These are some of the same tips I've used to write fundraising letters that have helped organizations raise as much as $75,000. Hey there, my name is Vanessa Lockshin, and welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to have you here today. So I love writing. It's one of the reasons why I got into fundraising and continue to stay in fundraising. I think it's really interesting and fascinating to be able to persuade people with words and to be able to convince them to donate. I think it's a really interesting piece of the work that we do. But I know that not everyone feels that way about writing. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we run into writer's block. We have problems thinking of what to say. It feels difficult, and so on. And of course, there's the results of the writing. Sometimes it can feel really deterring to feel like you're not really getting the results that you want from your writing. And as a result, we can feel like maybe we don't want to keep doing this. So today I want to give you some easy to follow tips that will help you improve your writing and your next fundraising appeal letter. Let's get to it. My first tip for you is to know who you're writing to. I think this is such an important piece in writing a fundraising letter, is knowing who the audience is. So I'll give you a really clear example of this. So writing to an individual donor is going to have a very different tone and style than writing to a foundation in a letter of inquiry versus writing to a corporate funder. Those are all very different audiences, and you're probably going to write to them in some pretty distinct ways. And so one of the first things I do when I sit down to write fundraising letters or emails is really spend some time thinking about who is it that I'm writing to? Why do they care about this cause? How can I remind them what's important to them and to really connect with them through my writing? My second tip for you is to make it easy to read. I can't even tell you how many fundraising letters and emails I've read over the years that are just huge blocks of text that are not easy to scan, and it's really easy to get lost in them as well. So my kind of general guideline for writing is to make sure that my paragraphs are not super long, they're easy to scan, and in fact, sometimes my paragraphs may just only be one sentence that stands out that really helps me to get the point across if someone is scanning through my letter quickly. The next tip I have for you is to give people a reason to keep reading very early on. And by that, I mean, get to the point. This is something that I think is so important in any kind of fundraising letter. We want to make sure people know why we're writing to them, what's in it for them, and why they should continue to read. Sometimes I find that in fundraising letters and emails, we kind of meander our way to the point, to the call to action way at the end. And one of the things I want to say to you is that it's good to just get to the point quickly, build the case, and then get to the point again at the end of the letter. That's another way to go about that. And I find that both for emails and letters, this is a really great strategy. My next tip for you is to write conversationally. This is one of the things that I think makes a huge difference. Nobody wants to read a letter that sounds like a form letter someone found on the internet. And believe me, there are plenty of templates out there for writing fundraising letters online, none of which you should use. So what I want you to encourage you to do instead is to find your own style of writing and be able to write conversationally to connect with people through that letter. Now, if you're someone who's really struggled with writing in the past and you think, oh, I'm not a good writer, this is not something I'm good at, there's lots of stories we can spin about that. One of the tips I want to give you is to actually use your smartphone to do a voice memo recording of your fundraising appeal and use that as your first draft. I find for a lot of people, this is a way where they can really capture their natural conversational tone and style in their writing versus trying to type it in one go on the computer where it can feel kind of more stifled and hard to capture that. So do a voice memo recording, transcribe that, and work from that as a first draft. That can really help you capture that tone much more easily. My next tip is to have a clear and compelling call to action. This is so important in fundraising letters. We can write all the great things we can think of, tell really good stories, but if there is not a clear call to action and a clear path to answering that call to action, we're probably going to lose people's interest pretty quickly. So we need to make sure we're clear, compelling, and hopefully deadline driven in what we're asking people to do and telling them where they can go or what the next step is to answer that call to action. So for instance, filling out the reply device that you've included, going to a website, sending you an email, whatever that might be, being very clear about what it is the next step is so that people don't get confused and hopefully follow through on taking that action. My next tip is to create a sense of urgency through your writing. This is so essential for fundraising, and Jeff Brooks talks a lot about this in some of his fundraising copywriting books, but I think it's something that really makes fundraising work is when we have a sense of urgency. Now, I'm not saying it needs to be like, your house is on fire kind of urgency. There's lots of types of urgency that we can create in our fundraising writing. And one of the ways that we can do this, certainly is being deadline driven. So if you're writing a year-end appeal letter, December 31st is a very natural sense of urgency and a clear deadline for people. But there's other ways to create that sense of urgency. So, being able to talk about the necessity of something, the need for something getting done sooner rather than later, and actually giving people good reasons why that needs to happen. My final tip for you is to show donors how they're a part of the change. I think this is such an important part of fundraising writing, is being able to really clearly communicate to donors what they're a part of. They want to know how they're going to make a difference, how they're going to facilitate some amount of change. I think one of the things that I see quite often in fundraising letters and emails is something like, donate today to support this cause, or donate today to help us make this change in the community. Things that are a little unclear. And, by clarifying that and really teasing out, what is the change? How is it that you're supporting us? What is it that we're facilitating through our donation? We're able to connect with people in a different way and hopefully help them show what it is their money can help do at our organization. So those are my writing tips for you. I hope they're helpful for you as you plan your next fundraising letter. As I said, this doesn't have to be a super difficult task, and I hope that some of these tips are some things that you can implement in your next letter. And I would love to hear from you in the comments below about which one of these tips you're most excited to try out, so let me know. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please be sure to give it a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribe to my channel for more weekly fundraising and communications tips.